What is good, guys? Welcome back to the Benefit Podcast, bringing you everything you need to know about living your best life. And this one comes off the back of a huge rise in the increase of use of AI, specifically ChatGPT, when it comes to things like writing training programs. And there's always something that massively lacks here. And to be honest, it was no different even when I was looking at training plans from the magazines back in the days, or, if you search online, you used to get websites like bodybuilding.com, all of these websites that will chuck you a training program. And, ChatGPT is almost like the latest thing, like stick in there whatever you want to stick in there. Give me a 3-day-a-week training program, a 4-day-a-week training program, make it specific to bring up my chest and arms, whatever you want to put in there. And all of these things are gonna, it will spew you out various exercises, it will spew you out different splits, it will give you the sessions that you can follow, but it misses a huge thing. It misses many things, but one of the big things that it misses specifically in relation to training, what those plans will give you very, very typically, you'll put that in there and you'll say, give me a 4-day-a-week training split that hits every muscle group twice a week. You're going to get an upper, lower, and then it will chuck you out some sort of, exercises, and it will give you some sets and reps. So what you'll likely get, you'll get a session, it's an upper body session, you'll get a couple of chest movements, couple of back movements, couple of shoulder movements, and some arms thrown in. And you'll probably get things like 3 sets of 8, 4 sets of 10. If you might even get something like 3 sets of 8 to 10, 4 sets of 10 to 12. You get into some sets, you get in some reps. What it really misses is any idea of intensity. So just to give an example of this, because I've seen it countless times, somebody who's given a training program that just tells them to go and do 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps. So they have absolutely no idea what intensity they're working towards. They might just pick up a set of dumbbells. Let's say we're doing a dumbbell chest press, flat dumbbell chest press, 3 sets of 8 to 10. They pick up a random set of dumbbells, they do 8 to 10 reps, and then they just stick with those dumbbells. They do 3 sets at the same weight. But let's say, for example, like that person picks up, I don't know, the 20 kilo dumbbells, and they perform their movement and they do 10 reps on that first set, and they put them down for a couple of minutes. They do 10 reps on the second set, they put them down for a couple of minutes, they do 10 reps on the third set. You might be thinking, fantastic, they're getting 3 sets of 10 reps, they're hitting the top end of the rep range. But what intensity is going into that? If on that first set, they've picked up the 20s, they're doing their 3 sets of 10, they've got the 20s in each hand, they get those 10 reps out and they put them down. What if they could have done another 10? What if they could have done another 2? That matters, like the proximity to failure, the amount of effort and intensity you're putting into those sets makes a huge difference. And pretty much all of the plans that I see written online, and to be honest, even some of the plans that coaches will give you, they give you absolutely no idea as to the intensity that you're working towards. And intensity can come in different formats. Different people will respond differently to seeing it written a different way. Some people just need to be told, like, you need to push every single set as hard as you possibly can, to the point that you can no longer perform a full repetition. That's what we call like form failure. Other people might use something like RIR, reps in reserve, and you might see that written in a plan as like 2 RIR. And essentially what you're then doing is getting to a point where you perceive that you could probably do 2 more reps, but you stop at that point. I personally don't think that's a great measure. I think a lot of people are going to underestimate how many reps they've got left. They'll hit a number, they'll think they've got 2 left, but if you really pushed and challenged them, I wouldn't be surprised if they could get another 4 or 5. I'm not a massive fan of RIR. Other people, percentages work, so it might just be 100% effort, 95% effort, 90% effort, whatever it might be. That can work for some people. You've got things like RPE scales, like rate of perceived exertion, those kind of things where like RPE 10 is absolute all out, balls to the wall focus, hitting failure. And then 9 is slightly less, etc., etc. whatever the metric is that you want to use, is actually really, really important. Because again, if you're in that situation where you've just got this plan that says 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, you pick up that weight and you just do 10 reps in those 3 sets, what happens next week and the week after and the week after and the week after? Are you just picking up the same set of dumbbells every single week and you're just doing your 10 reps and you're putting them down and you're moving on? Because there's no progress there. That's another area that a lot of those programs miss, is actually telling you how you can make progress. So the intensity is an enormous part that is missing, but actually giving you some indication as to how you can make progress is also a huge factor that misses too. And that can come in multiple formats. Like, one of my favorite approaches to this is something that you'll hear referred to as the double progression method. And in that instance, you're either going to progress the reps or the weight. So let's assume that we're pushing all 3 of those sets to failure. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the right or the wrong thing to do, but let's just use that example. Every single one of those 3 sets of dumbbell chest press, you're pushing to failure. So in your first set, you get to that 10 reps and that 10 reps is failing. So let's say the second set, you use the same weight, maybe you get to 8 reps and you fail at there. And because you're still trying to get within the 8 to 10 rep range, you might need to drop the weight slightly for that third set, and you might then hit 9 reps. So you've got that written down. You've got first set, 20 kilos, 10 reps, second set, 20 kilos, 8 reps. Third set, let's say you drop down to the 18s and you got 9 reps out of those. So those are your baseline numbers. So from a double progression point of view, any of those sets that you didn't hit the top end of the rep range, you'd stick at the weight until you do. So for example, like the second set where you had the 20 kilo dumbbells, but you only got 8 reps with them, that set we'd remain at 20 kilos, but we'd aim to get 9 or 10 reps. With the 18s where we got 9 reps, we'd aim to get 10 or more. The first set, we hit the top end of the rep range. So that one we can bump up a little bit this week. So we might try the 22s on that first set, but we might only get 7 or 8 reps out of them before we fail. So you've got 2 opportunities for progress. You're either increasing the weight or you're increasing the reps. And that's just a really simple way of doing things. Again, there are multiple other ways to make progress. And what I think is also really worth noting is that in making progress and in adding reps or adding weight, your form shouldn't be breaking down too much. Form should always be the focus. Like, you shouldn't be saying you're doing more reps if the reps that you're doing are half reps. If the first 6 of your reps are good quality, full, deep repetitions, but then like reps 7 and 8, you're barely coming down halfway before you're pressing up again. Well, that's not really a rep. So, but if you write that down as you having done you've done your 6 full reps, but you've done 2 of those little halfies, if you're writing down that you've done 8 reps, you're probably going to look at that next week and think that you've done a lot more than you have, and you're going to potentially then progress quicker. And that's where you see people getting into bother with just chasing up weight on the weight that they're lifting when their form is just getting worse and worse. So just a few things to note there, like particularly if you are relying or looking at using AI or just any sort of training plan, if there's no indication as to intensity and there's no indication as to how you're going to progress that plan, it's probably a pretty poorly written plan. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of them are, especially where they're AI generated and even where they're provided by a coach who just simply doesn't understand those concepts. So if you do have any questions on training plans, like if you're following something at the moment and you're just not really sure about it, if you want to know what might be best for you, please do feel free to pop me a message. I'm more than happy to have a little chat through these things and see what I can offer. Any of my socials at Ben Howard Fitness, ben@benhowardfitness.com is the email address. Any likes, shares, comments, reviews, all of those things go a long, long way to getting the good message out to more people. So I appreciate every single person who is watching or listening, depending, now that we're on YouTube as well. But yeah, thank you very much. I will be back again very soon with another one. But enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekends, and I will see you again very, very soon.